Both sides can say that that could be the end of the war. That could be a basis to go ahead. But maybe both are too proud to say this themselves, and we need a third force to come up and say the world is requesting you to please call it off. And maybe India should be a loud voice for this.
But you've also, sort of praised, Modi government's diplomatic initiatives.
If I were speaking in my own capacity, I could say what I wanted to. But if I were to advise a government, even a Congress party government, I would not be advising my Prime Minister to start grandstanding and attacking him, because I've often believed that sort of loud lecturing sits ill with low leverage.
So long tension with the High Command. We have read a lot about this meeting with, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi and Mallikarjun Kharge. What exactly happened?
Problems have been a bit exaggerated.
Hello and welcome to The Print. We have with us senior Congress leader and Lok Sabha MP Shashi Tharoor. Welcome to The Print, sir. I know you are very busy. BJP has also released its Kerala list, and Congress obviously must be coming out with it soon. I want to first understand, what are the key issues in Kerala?
Well, first of all, there is anti-incumbency. They've been around for 10 years, which itself is a surprise because for the preceding half a century, there's been alternation of governments every 5 years. Suddenly this time they managed to win in 2021, even though they had won in 2016. And that was a bit of a shock for everyone. We're trying to turn that narrative around, getting gold from the Shabarimala temple, all sorts of stuff. So there are issues that the two opposition forces, namely UDF and BJP, will be attacking the state government on. But beyond that, I think what we in the UDF want to stand for is a positive narrative for the future. It's very clear that what the left has done is not working. The state's famous Kerala model has now become a debt model. The state is spending more money on debt servicing, paying interest and pensions than it pays on for development projects. By September, it runs out of money for salaries, has to borrow money to pay salaries and Onam bonuses and so on. So you're really looking at a situation where clearly a new approach is needed. And that new approach we can provide. We have experienced, qualified, competent people in the UDF who can do it. We are not lacking in ideas. Certainly people like me will be giving a lot of these ideas to the party in the times ahead. I myself, as I said, have published a number of articles reflecting what I think about a lot of the directions in which Kerala needs to go. And to give you just one example, I think we have to be much more open to business because Kerala is otherwise just a remittance economy. We are surviving on lotteries, liquor and remittances. You can't have that as a viable model for a state. We need to let investors come in big time, and they won't do so because they're too scared of the red flags of the left and the Hartal culture and the entire sort of militant unionism that the left has spawned in the state. In order to offset that, we need something pretty radical, and one of the suggestions I have made is that we need an Investor Protection Act to be actually able to guarantee to investors that their money will be safe in our state. Once we do all of that, I think we will be able to bring in much more significant areas of investment, and they will not be in heavy industries like the neighboring state of Tamil Nadu, which has much more land and they can have the smokestacks and won't bother them. We have a much more fragile ecology. We have much more population density. We have a very highly literate workforce that's available. So what we should do is shift towards high technology kinds of industries, what's called the weightless economy, not the heavy weights of factories and industries, but the weightless economy of high tech, space, biotech, hospitality and wellness. We can turn some of our disadvantages into advantages. Learn from Western countries that have tackled similar challenges rather than looking for examples within India, because Kerala is an anomaly within India. So we can do a lot, and I've got very specific ideas that are written about and published that I won't waste your time on right now, but which we can definitely take forward.
But I read one of your articles where you had also praised the LDF government's work. So at a time when you're praising what they have done, how do you get into an election, sort of saying that we need to...
That was actually a year ago, and more than a year ago, it was January of last year. And at that time it was based on a claim that I read in a report which turned out to have been based on a report of the government itself. So the state government claimed that they had dramatically reduced clearance times and encouraged a new startup culture in Kerala, and their claims got replicated in the World Startup Report that I read. And so my article was based on the World Startup Report, which itself, sadly, apparently had inaccurate data from the state government. So I checked, and indeed my own party I was quick to point out that a lot of these claims were actually not accurate. And once I had seen the facts and figures, I changed. Within a couple of weeks, I issued a correction saying this apparently is not true, this apparently is not true. We do need ease of doing business. We do need to create more startups. But when the Kerala government talks about having created a single window clearance, and it turns out there is not a single window at all, but a single portal. In other words, still need 25 clearances. You submit it through one window, but then you have to go in 25 other windows. It's a single portal rather than a single window. We want to change all of that, and we will.
So what exactly is going to be your role in Kerala elections? We know that, will you be restricting yourself to your parliamentary or will you be campaigning across the state?
No, I'm co-chairman of the campaign committee, and therefore I'll be campaigning throughout the state. I expect to be campaigning in all 14 districts. I had greater ambitions, but now that the Election Commission has stunned us by giving us such a short deadline, April 9th means that we have just over 3 weeks of campaigning time from today. I don't think I'm going to be able to hit as many constituencies as I would have initially wanted to, but I will certainly try and hit as many as possible. And I will, in particular, I think, focus on youth professionals, some of the areas of the aspirational communities that really resonate with my message. I will try and amplify through the media as well. And my message is going to be to try and keep the other side on its toes through a positive narrative on our side, rather than constantly leave ourselves open to the kind of negative campaigning that has too often disfigured our political landscape.
You've also had prolonged tension with the High Command. We have read a lot about this meeting with, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi and Mallikarjun Kharge. What exactly happened? How did the turnaround happen? And you also mentioned you're the chairman of the campaign committee. So how did the turnaround happen?
No, I think it was a very good, honest, constructive discussion. Really, the problems have been a bit exaggerated. They only really centered around Operation Sindoor, where I had a distinct personal view, which was not the party's view. And I think it became one of those situations where we had to agree to disagree, because my view I had already articulated in an article I had published a couple of weeks after Pahalgam, that India did need to give a kinetic response, that the diplomatic response of collecting evidence and shaming Pakistan, which we tried in 2611, had not achieved results. No one had been prosecuted or punished by Pakistan. That the alternative approach of getting Pakistan to join an investigation, which we tried after Pathankot, that had also not worked, and the Pakistanis came, visited an Indian airbase, and went away and said, oh, the Indians did it to themselves. So that again meant that also didn't work. That left us, I believe, no choice but a kinetic response. That is, we had to hit them. At the same time, I wrote in the article, we don't want a war with Pakistan of any escalation, because it's not in our interest. We're a country focused on our development. We have goals for the well-being of our people. We are focused on development, growth, prosperity, technology, not losing ourselves in war. And plus, we need foreign investment, but investors don't like war zones. So we don't want to be a war zone. For all of those reasons, I said, let us confine ourselves to hitting terrorist targets, teaching them a lesson, and then shutting up. Now, this message, which the Indian Express, and they carried the article summarized under the headline, "Hit hard, hit smart," was the argument that I had made as an individual citizen of India advocating a point of view. When 2 or 3 weeks later, that's exactly what the government did, how would you expect me to react? Of course, I supported them during Sindoor and in the aftermath of it. And yes, when the government asked me to lead a delegation, I was happy to do so, because I was advocating a course of action in which I personally strongly believed. Now, having said all of this, my party did feel I was out of line. That was not the line that the party believed in or had taken. And so some tensions had arisen in the course of the year, which perhaps were allowed to fester for a bit too long. Though in all fairness to me, I would like to point out that when I came back from the Sindoor trip and we had the monsoon session of Parliament, I did not double down on this and keep stressing the disagreement with the party. In fact, I went the other way and just completely stayed silent. I even responded to the swarm of cameras outside Parliament with the words "Maun Vrat."
Right.
And I walked in and I stayed silent during the debate on Sindoor in Parliament. So I didn't ever oppose my party where it mattered, that is on the floor of the House or in Parliament or in public thereafter. But it needed, I think, the very healthy exercise of a detailed, honest and frank discussion with the party leadership to clear the air, where they could tell me what they thought of what I'd done, and I could tell them what I thought of the way I'd been treated. And I think once the air was cleared, we all decided to march on together with the election looming in my state. There was no question that all that we all wanted was to ensure that whatever differences of opinion had occurred on the border should not affect us in the hinterland, as it were.
So are you all on the same page now?
Yeah, we're fighting this election unitedly in Kerala.
Because why I ask this question is because, in hindsight, do you think contesting the, election against Mallikarjun Kharge, do you think that could have been a trigger point also? Do you think it was a mistake?
I don't think so, simply because I think the Congress party has always prided itself on being a democratic party. It's a big tent party. There's a wide range of opinions in it. I used to joke during UPA 2 that we have Marx to Montek in one party. And that is, or Marx to Manmohan if you want, because there were significant views on economics, on liberalization, on transformation of our economy and so on, which in many ways is the hallmark of a big tent party. But having said that, there's also a tradition of democratic dissent. Mine was not the first election for the presidency. There have been many others, distinguished leaders like Sharad Pawar, Rajesh Pilot, Jitendra Prasad, many others had fought for the presidency in the past. I'm honored to now go down in the footnotes of Congress party history as a guy who won the most votes, more than even these very illustrious senior leaders, in my attempt to open up a space. But the reason I ran wasn't out of any other reason, but the fact that so many people, ordinary party workers, came to me, inviting me and requesting me to contest. I actually went to the Gandhi family. I went to Mrs. Gandhi, to Rahul Gandhi and to Priyanka Gandhi to say, look, are you serious about this? Do you really want a free and fair contest? And they all said yes. Mrs. Gandhi, starting with the outgoing Congress president. She said, I'm tired. I want to see a genuine thing for the succession. By all means contest. And it was in that spirit that I contested. I wasn't doing it as an act of rebellion. It was to give voice to a certain current, certain set of views within the party. I wasn't just speaking for myself, I was speaking for the grassroots, for the lower level party workers, for the delegates who had otherwise felt they didn't have enough role or consultation. I was voicing, for example, the views of people that I had heard that why should a DCC president be approved in Delhi far away when they have no idea what's going on in the district? Why can't we empower the lower levels of the party to make some of these decisions and be accountable for them, etc., etc. So those are the things that I ran on. If you listen to the old videos now, 4 years old,
yes,
of my campaign, you'll see that consistently that was my message. And I don't regret that at all. Those are things that needed to be said. And I think to some degree they got heard where they needed to be.
Right. You mentioned there were many who wanted you to contest. There are many who would also like to see you as the chief minister. Are you still in the reckoning?
No,
for the
I'm not in the reckoning.
No?
I'm not a candidate. And I'm not a candidate in this particular assembly election. Look, I have, as you know, come into politics with a rather long track record in national and international issues. That is, issues that I've written about, worked in world of international diplomacy and foreign affairs for a very long time. And having come and done all of that, I really expected that would be where the party would use me, and to a great extent that is where they have used me. At the same time, as a constituency MP, I've been very focused on the issues of the state and of my own constituency, because I have a responsibility to be accountable to my voters, to improve their lives to the extent I can with the position I have as an MP. So in that sense, I've developed a greater awareness of domestic political issues from the grassroots up, which has stood me in good stead. Now, you're right, some people did ask that I should be interested. And I said, look, I have no objection. If the party wants me, I'm available to do that too. And it's not that I'm lacking in ideas. If anything, now I've published something like 7 or 8 different articles in the last year or so in a variety of publications, arguing a certain vision of the transformation of Kerala that I believe is needed for the state. And that's entirely domestic. It's very little of it is about international connections. I think we can benefit from some international lessons for our own development, and I will talk about that. I have talked about that too. But otherwise, yes, I have been giving some thought to all that. But those ideas are available to whoever does become chief minister and whoever does become the party leader who will have to execute these things. My voice will always be available as an MP from the state, as somebody who is building his final home in that state. I expect very much to have a stake in that state, and therefore I hope to be a constructive public voice for some of the changes Kerala needs.
Right. BJP has come out with this list for
Yeah.
Kerala elections. How do you look at sort of BJP's prospects in Kerala, you know, especially Kerala and Tamil Nadu, the two southern states that it has not been able to make inroads?
Well, in Tamil Nadu they had 4 seats in the assembly. In Kerala they have 0. In Tamil Nadu, they've forged some alliances that may improve them slightly, but not much. In Kerala, they have not really got any significant new alliances. So my guess is at best they will go to 1 or 2 seats from 0. But I don't see them making a significant dent or even becoming, some of them were hoping they would become a kingmaker. You know, holding the balance between 2 opposing forces. I don't really see that happening. For that, they would need at least 10, 12, 15 seats, and I don't see where that could possibly come from.
And what do you think is the
BJP's
reason?
problem is that they come with 2 problems that don't do very well in Kerala. One is the communal message, this record nationally of being a voice of bigotry against Muslims and Christians, where Muslims and Christians are 47% of our population. You know, you can't start off alienating 47% of the electorate and expect to have a significant electoral result with the rest. So that's one big problem the BJP is facing. The second thing is a lot of their sensibility is a North Indian sensibility. They haven't quite got the fact that our history is different from theirs. So, for example, for us, Christianity didn't come with the British. It came with St. Thomas sailing across the waters, doubting Thomas of the Bible, within a few decades after Christ. Islam didn't come by the sword with Muhammad bin Qasim charging through and so on. Islam came in the form of Arabs who had been trading with us for 1,000 years before the Prophet. And when it came as news, they came and said, hey, you know what's happening? In our part of the world, there's this prophet, he's saying this and this and this. And these are people we had known and trusted and lived with because they were coming literally for 1,000 years. When the winds changed, they would come, settle on the coast of Kerala, marry locally, trade, stay for 6 months. When the winds changed, they'd go back to Arabia, next day they'd come again. This has been going on for 1,000 years. There's plenty of archaeological evidence for this too. So when these people brought the news, it was received in a very receptive spirit. And one of our kings even led a flotilla of ships to go to the Arabian Peninsula to meet the Prophet. So that was how Islam came to Kerala. Our whole attitude is different. That I think our North Indian friends don't fully understand. And then we've got, for example, the hilarious misstep of the BJP a couple of years ago when they were trying to make inroads in Kerala. Our biggest festival of Onam is a festival that celebrates King Mahabali. King Mahabali is an Asura king. Okay. And he was such a good, just, kind and popular king that all the people were prosperous and equal. That's the story in the songs about him. And then the gods got jealous, the Devas got jealous. So they got together and invited Vishnu to deal with this troublesomely popular king. And Vishnu came down to earth in the form of a dwarf Brahmin called Vamana. And he asked Mahabali for a boon. And Mahabali was a very just and generous king and always kept his word, said, you may have your boon. And this guy said, can I have 3 steps? And king said, what are you going to do, 3 steps of land? I mean, you are a small, short dwarf. No, I need a house. That's all I need is 3 steps of my land. So the king said, of course, I give you my word. He said, you won't change your mind. You'll give me 3 steps. He said, yes. And then, of course, Vamana grows to the gigantic size of Vishnu. With 1 step, he conquers the earth. 2nd step, he conquers the heavens. 3rd step, he says to Mahabali, where shall I put my foot? And Mahabali, realizing he's in the presence of the Lord, bends his head and says, on my head. And Vishnu is about to press him down into Patal Lok, as it were. And as he's doing it, he says, all right, you've been a kind and good king. I'll give you 1 wish. What do you want? And Mahabali says, I want to come back once a year just to see that my people are doing well and are prospering and happy. And so that wish is granted. And it's when he comes back once a year that we celebrate Onam. It is like Christmas and Diwali combined for us. It's a huge celebration. And all communities rejoice. They buy new clothes. They have feasts and sadhyas. They exchange gifts. That is Kerala, right? What does the BJP go and do? They tweet happy Vamana Puja. Now, Vamana is not the hero of the story in Kerala. So these are some of the mistakes the BJP has to overcome. They have to start thinking authentically as Malayalis and not come with a sort of preconceived North Indian agenda of communal bigotry, which they're trying to then shove down the throats of the people of Kerala. It won't work.
So, there are millions of Malayalis residing in Gulf countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you see how the West Asia conflict is sort of impacting them. What do you think the government needs to do? How it needs to respond?
No, look, I think the government is trying to keep open lines of communication to everybody. It's shown a strong degree of support for the Gulf countries, and I think we should. That was the right thing to do. But having said that, in the longer term, and not even that long, I think right now we should be calling, we should be leading an international coalition demanding peace. We should be actually asking both sides to stop this conflict, because it's hurting us and hurting a lot of innocent countries that didn't bring this conflict upon themselves. And I do believe there are enough elements to allow both Mr. Trump and the Americans and the Iranians to declare victory and call it off. Mr. Trump can easily say that all he wanted to achieve was to degrade Iran's capacity, its industrial strength, its energy, its missiles and its military infrastructure. That he's done. Now he can afford to walk away. And the Iranians can say, well, we just wanted to save our government, prevent regime change, and we've succeeded in that, so we can also declare victory and walk away. If both sides can say that, that could be the end of the war. That could be a basis to go ahead. But maybe both are too proud to say this themselves, and we need a third force to come up and say the world is requesting you to please call it off. And maybe India should be a loud voice for peace.
Right, but you've also, sort of praised, Modi government's diplomatic initiatives. Recently, Jaishankar's comment on the Iran conflict. There have been instances in the past, as I pointed out, where, you sort of received flack from your colleagues. For instance, Jairam Ramesh has a very different point of view on how the West Asia conflict is turning out to be.
I don't disagree with those who say that, we could have taken a stand on principle, we could have condemned them, that there are moral issues at stake and so on.
For instance.
But there is a difference between what we can say sitting in the opposition, which has no consequences, and what a government can say, which has a lot of issues at stake. When we in the Congress were in power, we didn't condemn the Soviet invasion of Hungary, of Czechoslovakia, of Afghanistan. Why? Because we judged we had too much at stake in the relations of the Soviet Union to antagonize them. The Modi government did not condemn the invasion of Ukraine. Same logic. It is one thing when you're in the opposition or you're an independent commentator. It's another thing when you're in government. So I am thinking, because I am after all in a particular position right now, that if I was speaking in my own capacity, I could say what I wanted to. But if I were to advise a government, even a Congress party government, I would not be advising my Prime Minister to start grandstanding and attacking the Americans, because I've often believed that sort of loud lecturing sits ill with low leverage, and we have low leverage. We don't have the ability to resist if a country we antagonize turns against us. We are vulnerable. We need them. We have big issues at stake with many of these countries. That's my point.
Just last few questions. You've often described Trump as unusual president, keeping, the recent tariff, the West Asia conflict. Can you predict what will be his next move?
No, I'm not sure anyone can predict his next move, including himself. He is a genuinely unpredictable leader, and as I said, for that reason, very unusual. There's never been another one like him in any major government in the world, and I don't think there will be another for a long time to come.
And the opposition has been trying to raise the issue of the LPG crisis. You've also spoken about how Kerala is impacted by it. How do you think this crisis should have been sort of tackled by the government?
Look, I think they were confronted with matters beyond their control that they didn't really anticipate. I think with hindsight, we could say maybe it would have been great if they had anticipated it and they had actually managed to get some LPG stocks lined up, because, had conflict been predicted, then we would have probably done this better. At the moment, I'm afraid most countries have not done very much better, but our vulnerability is great because a heck of a lot of our LPG and our LNG come through the Strait of Hormuz, and it's not coming. I think we got 4 ships or something through, and that's basically 1.5 days supply of the LPG we need. So we still have some serious challenges, and I think it's important for us to recognize that this needs to be tackled on a war footing. There's no point being in denial about the fact that there is a shortage, there is a crisis. There are too many stories coming from around the country, everything from long queues, clutching empty cylinders, film crews not being able to get khana on the set. Now we have campaigning in the next few weeks and wondering where we're going to get dhabas on the street to be able to give us supplies while we go around campaigning. It's not going to be easy. Tough times ahead for all of us.
Right.
But I would say the sooner this war ends, the sooner we can get back to normal, the better for everyone.
One last question. Elections have been announced. It was done yesterday. Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, many Congress leaders have said that, the schedule has been sort of tailored for the BJP.
Well, I think it's certainly not been tailored for us because if you look at Kerala, for example, the LDF has 99 MLAs, incumbents. And for them, obviously, life is much easier because they already have been working in those constituencies for the last 5 years, some cases 10 years. Whereas us, we're going to have a whole lot of new candidates because we lost those seats in the last couple of elections. And these new candidates will have far too little time to familiarize themselves to the electorate and to get the electorate familiarized with them. So it is certainly stacked against us, speaking for Kerala at any rate. Therefore, the incumbents will benefit from a short lag time. Assam, same thing, very short lead time, the same date as Kerala, 3 weeks away. And obviously the incumbents will benefit from that. Puducherry is again BJP incumbent.
Right.
If you look at Bengal and Tamil Nadu, they've given more time there because there the BJP is in the opposition. So I think that to some degree, this time frame certainly only benefits the ruling party in Delhi and not us.
Thank you so much and good luck for your elections.
Thank
you
you,
so
Neelam.
much.
All the
Thank
best.
you.